The Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe plays a crucial role in supporting industrial development within the nation of Zimbabwe. This, of course, done through several initiatives and developments that are all governed through the interpretation and implementation of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. Hello, I'm PJ Nagoli, and we are talking everything to do with the procurement sector within the country. But the key question is, how is this enabler towards supporting industrial development governed? To answer these questions and more is Terence Machawira, who is the Director of Corporate Services at PRAZ. Director, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you, PJ. Good day, viewers.
Thank you so much. Now, Zimbabwe has implemented through the Second Republic a number of initiatives. We talk of the National Development Strategy number 1, which is set to end in a few years. We talk of Vision 2030, which fundamentally seeks to make Zimbabwe an upper middle income society by 2030. There's also the Industrial Development Policy. As an institution, how are your policies aligning to the broader national policies?
Thank you very much, PJ. The Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, PRAZ, is a creature of statute. Its birth certificate is, as you rightly pointed out, is in the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. And this act is also grounded in the Constitution, which provides that an Act of Parliament shall provide for a procurement system that is transparent, fair, honest, cost-effective, and efficient and competitive. So you'd find that the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe is thus an enabler of public procurement, and it is also an enabler of industrialization for Zimbabwe. So if you look at the NDS1, which, like you pointed out, is coming to an end in a few months' time, it has 14 key pillars. I'll just speak on some of the pillars that have a bearing on PRAZ activities. So for instance, there's the pillar of governance, which requires that we must have accountable and institutions with good governance. Mm-hmm. So you'd find that from a good governance perspective, we can look at it from two perspectives. We can look at good governance pertaining to the organization and good governance pertaining to public procurement in general. So from an internal perspective, we are governed by the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, and we also adhere to other pieces of legislation such as the Public Entities Corporate Governance Act, as well as we also meet all the statutory requirements that we are required to meet as an institution in Zimbabwe. But also on the governance aspect of public procurement, we also try to ensure that all the procuring entities are following what the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act provides for, and we also have things to enable the attainment of an upper middle income society by 2030 through aspects such as affirmative procurement, whereby we are encouraging that there should be domestic preference for the procurement of products that are produced by those sectors of society that were previously disadvantaged. So in this instance, we are looking at sectors such as women, such as the youth, and also in the upcoming amendments, we are also going to include people with disability, as well as veterans of the liberation struggle. So that would be on the governance aspect. Then we also have the aspect of devolution. The Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act actually devolved the practice of procurement from what used to be the State Procurement Board, where the State Procurement Board would be the one that would be awarding the tenders, and then also being the referee. But what we currently have now is that PRAZ is actually the referee, it's the regulator of public procurement, and public procurement itself has been devolved to the various public entities, the procuring entities, so to speak. So you'd find that if there are procurement requirements for a government MDA in Binga, for instance, that is done by that entity, and we just come in as facilitators, as the regulators. So that would be the devolution aspect. We also have the community information centers, which are situated in the various community, in the ZimPost offices throughout the country. That way we are able to reach a wider audience of the public procurement ecosystem so that people don't have to have everything being done in Harare. And we are also proud to advise that we've now opened a Bulawayo office as part of the devolution strategy. I'll move on to the digital economy. One of the pillars of NDS1 is promotion of the digital economy, and the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe has indeed adopted that aspect of digitalization through the introduction of the electronic government procurement system. I'm sure you've been hearing the noise that we've been making about the system, which is aimed to make public procurement and the disposal of assets more transparent, more cost-effective, and swifter, since things will be done electronically without the need of pushing paper and being present in Harare every time procurement processes are taking place. We also have within the institution itself other aspects of the digital economy, where we've adopted the electronic records documentation and records management system, which would see us moving to become a paperless organization. So this is in keeping with the government thrust of a digital economy. We also have an ERP that is currently being used for our finance and administration. Then the last pillar I would want to touch on is that of human capacity development. So you'd find that the NDS pillar aims to have human resources or human capital that is actually suited for the environment that we find ourselves in this community of nations. So we've taken this aspect very seriously, and you'd find that one of our statutory duties is that we should have procurement professionals who are up to date with the modern trends that are taking place. And in order to ensure that this happens, we have an e-learning platform, which is a self-paced platform where you can actually learn what the tenets of public procurement and disposal of public assets are at your very own pace without being pushed. And once you've completed it successfully, you're then issued with a certificate. In addition to that, we have a very vibrant capacity building department within the authority. It from time to time hosts various conferences, seminars, and workshops so as to assist our practitioners in public procurement as well as the bidding community to keep abreast with the trends in public procurement. So in order to take this to a new level, we've also established a Southern Africa Public Procurement Training Academy, which we hope will then not just be limited to Zimbabwe, but will go regional. And that is part of our pursuit of the pillar of human capacity development. So I would say that those are the aspects that PRAZ is pursuing to ensure that we align ourselves with NDS 1. But I'll also just emphasize that as part of the government policy, I think you are aware that there's the initiative of a one government policy. And through our various activities, we try to ensure that all the other ministries, departments, and agencies of government that have a bearing in the manner in which we do our procurement are also involved. Thank you.
Let's talk about that. You bring up an interesting point about how you work with other public procurement entities. How are you ensuring that as an institution, the government ministries that you're working with, the government departments that you're working with are well coordinated to contribute to industrial development?
Thank you very much for that, PJ. I think what then happens is that from time to time, PRAZ does issue circulars and guidelines to the market, which are aligned to government policy. So what we then do is we issue out these policies which have a bearing on either the conduct of bidders, in the way they are conducting themselves, or in the way that the procuring entities are conducting themselves. They give the guidelines by which the players in the public procurement industry should then adhere to. In the event that there is lack of adherence to the principles therein, an aggrieved bidder has recourse to a review panel procedure where they can raise issues of concern to the authority, and then the authority will deal with these issues using the review procedure that I've spoken about. And in instances where the procuring entity is dissatisfied with the conduct of a bidder, again, there's a process called debarment where the procuring entity can actually apply for these bidders to be debarred from participating in public procurement. However, generally speaking, you'll find that there's a code of conduct for both the bidders and the procurers, which is binding upon the parties and is found in our regulations, and that assists the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe in setting the tone and ensuring that people adhere to the industrial practices that we are pursuing as a nation. Thank you.
Director, thank you so much. Industrial development is the topic of the day. How is the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe contributing to this? To give us more answers on this particular subject, we speak to another director, Cliff Gondo. As I said earlier on, industrial development is the subject of the day. We're joined by Terence Machawira, who is the Director for Corporate Services, just taking us through all of that. But now we are joined by the Director of Capacity Building, Mr. Cliff Gondo, to take us through the targets and benchmarks of PRAZ. Director, we speak of industrial development. We speak of how PRAZ is contributing to the national industrial development. But what are some of the targets and benchmarks that you have set for yourself as an institution to actually see to it that it doesn't become only talk, but action is put into it?
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of specific targets, I think I have to give you the broader view. Mm-hmm. You agree with me that in Zimbabwe, public procurement provides the biggest marketplace for private sector players to supply goods and services to government. So from a benchmark perspective, we're looking at issues to do with inclusivity, leaving no one behind. And from that, we've got data analytics that looks at the number of contracts that have been awarded to special interest groups, such as women-owned businesses, youth-owned enterprises, and also businesses owned by veterans of the liberation struggle. Then apart from that, we also look not just the number of contracts, also but the value in terms of the business that is going through that. But I would say probably the biggest game changer is to do with making public procurement easily accessible to these special interest groups. With EGP, it means that small businesses now can scan through through our website the contracts that are available, that are being issued by the government. They can now do this from the comfort of their offices. Previously, small businesses found it challenging to travel to faraway places such as Kanyemba to bid for government contracts there, ZPC Wange out there. So now they can do it from the comfort of their home, and we track these metrics. We also look at the performance of the PEs themselves in terms of the business that they are channeling to these special interest groups. With partners such as Buy Zimbabwe, we are looking at even considering how we can come up with objective criteria in terms of awards that we can reward public sector entities, PEs, that are channeling their procurement budgets to these special interest groups.
Director, you bring up an interesting subject, and that is to do with special interest groups. When one looks at your portfolio, capacity building, we look at the issue that the economy has significantly grown. With growth comes new players. Some of those players, the majority of them, dare to say, are smaller players, as those that have been generically known to the procurement sector. How are you ensuring fair play for these underdogs, if I might call them, fair play within the procurement sector? Of course, access is another issue, which has been solved by the introduction of the EGP system. But we've introduced accessibility. What about equality and equity?
Equality and equity are at the cornerstone of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act itself. I think one of the objectives specifically looks at fair and equitable treatment of all bidders. Especially when we talk about equitable now, it's about tilting the playing field in favor of those previously disadvantaged groups. And from that perspective, we again look at the guidelines from the Constitution itself that talks of a procurement system that is fair, that is cost effective, and PRAS is committed to ensuring that issues to do with inclusivity are also considered through provisions such as reservation and also preferential procurement. Through reservation, we are saying, look, we are working on guidelines that could potentially set aside part of the budget of procurement entities, MDAs, so that part of their procurement budget can be channeled through those disadvantaged players. Then that will be reservation. But most importantly, currently, the law actually talks about preferential procurement, where through the evaluation system, things are structured in such a manner that the government of Zimbabwe is prepared to spend up to 20% when procuring goods from a previously disadvantaged group, from local suppliers, especially when they're in competition with foreigners. So the regulations of inclusivity, also considering Section 29 of the Act speaks to local procurement, which encompasses the special players that we are talking about.
Director, thank you so much for speaking to us.
No, thank you very much. My pleasure.
Director for Capacity Building within the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, he says that the institution is tilting the playing field towards the underdogs within the market. What do you think is the response? Is it enough for PRAS to do this so that the playing field becomes equal and equitable for all market players? I am PJ Nagoli. Goodbye.